Egghead News here. Today I'm going to be going over some huge news in the NHL. Literally just like 2 hours ago, before the time of recording, Eric Staal was traded for Marcus Johansson, and this basically is a blockbuster trade. So today I'm going to be analyzing this trade. But before we get into this video, if you do go on to enjoy it, please consider subscribing to help me reach 400 subs. We are so close, and we're literally actually 6 subscribers away, and every subscriber really helps out, even if we're not on the road to 400. Anyways, let's get into the video. So today, September the 16th, if you're watching on a different day, there was a 1-for-1 trade made by the Minnesota Wild and Buffalo Sabres. The trade was Marcus Johansson to the Minnesota Wild for Eric Staal. Staal is, of course, going to the Sabres. This trade has a lot to unpack about it. There are no conditions or additional pieces. That's right, this was a complete, simple 1-for-1 trade. But there is just so much to talk about outside of the trade on paper. Firstly, let's talk about if this was a fair trade on the surface. On the surface, absolutely not. There's no way I would consider this a trade that was fair. Staal is a better player. Yes, he's older, but at the same time, he is much better than Johansson, and I think to the day he retires, he will still be better than Johansson, and I think he has some good years left. And he's $1.25 million cheaper than him. Yes, there's only 1 year left on his deal, but Buffalo could probably secure a 1 or 2 year deal with Staal for around the same price if they want to bring him back. And I think he'll have at least 1 year left, unless he actually doesn't want to play hockey, like he does not like hockey anymore, but I don't think that's true. So value-wise, this trade wasn't fair. And Johansson wasn't a long-term move either, or at least not necessarily, because you could count his 2-year contract as long-term, and you could say that he still has some potential left, but honestly, I think he probably will leave that potential untapped. So the only way you could say he's a long-term deal is if he re-signs, which is a possibility, and that's probably the main way that this trade will become a long-term deal for Minnesota. Honestly, I see this as a huge power move by Buffalo. People of Buffalo shouldn't be intimidated by how old Staal is. He is still a great top 6 forward who can get 50 or more points each season. So, yes, he's old, but honestly, I think unless he becomes the next Yager and plays way too long, he'll probably be a 50 to 40 point guy till he retires. And I think he has at least 2 or 3 good years left, at least. That's, of course, in my opinion. But will he decide to use them? That is definitely a big question. 5 likes and I'll do a video on that later. Anyways, I think this trade was a steal. Really, both teams aren't gaining any long-term assets, but at least Buffalo is getting a cheap star player, whereas Minnesota is getting an overpaid top 9 forward who may not even deliver next season. I get that they needed to ship off a centerman, and Staal was probably their guy to send off because the rest of the centermen are young and have lots of potential, but they could have gotten a lot more for Staal, to be honest. Some of you may disagree with me because some of you think age really lowers the value, but in my opinion, I think it doesn't lower it that much, especially in this case. I think it does lower it, but not as much as people think it does. I simply think they could have and should have gotten more, especially from a team that is contending for the cup, as someone like Staal is gold to them because they're obviously a star player, so he helps out a lot in the game, and he's a veteran, so he helps out in the locker room, and he has immense playoff performance, so he helps out in the locker room, especially in intense moments. Also, Staal is very cheap, and all of that could have gotten a lot from a contender team, or at least more than what they got in this trade. A team that comes to mind is a team like Boston or Carolina, or someone else who is currently eliminated and looking to bounce back next year and hopefully get a deep run. Honestly, Minnesota got fleeced. So let's talk about some pros and cons for both sides, both Buffalo's side and Minnesota's side. And maybe we'll find some light at the end of the tunnel for Minnesota. So let's start with them. The first pro that comes to mind with Johansson is his age. His age was obviously a big thing for this trade, as they traded Staal for his age and obviously his position. He is 30 and he's significantly younger than Staal, and that could make a difference if Minnesota wants to bring him back, as he could provide a couple years of service and at least more than Staal will. Another pro is that he is versatile. He has played both on winger and center, and I think he is a better winger, but he can step in and be a center if someone is injured. Minnesota did need to get rid of centerman, and Johansson's versatility as a winger and centerman is definitely a big reason why Minnesota wanted him, because they really just wanted someone who's not a centerman, but it's also good that he's both, because maybe if one of their centermen gets injured, they can have someone to step in. Another pro is that he could be a good depth player, or I guess top 6 player. He could be a good second liner. I can't see him being a first liner, but he could provide some decent secondary scoring, and he could also provide some depth on the 3rd and 4th line. I think Minnesota's top 6 will be still okay without Staal, and I don't think they'll need Johansson to jump up in the top 6, so I see him playing on the 3rd line, unless he's playing center, but I don't think he will be because they were trying to get rid of centermen, so why would they want him to play center if they don't need centermen? Now that we've talked about some of his pros, let's talk about some of his cons. First of all, let's talk about his production. His production has been very subpar for a few years. He used to be a good top 6 forward, but he has declined quite a bit. He went from being a solid 40-point scorer to being a 30-point scorer. Yes, these past 2 seasons have been shortened for him, but just in general, he has declined. And even before he started to decline a lot, his production was never really that high. His career high is 58 points, and that was the only time he scored above 50 points. So in general, he has never really been a high-end top 6 forward that Staal was and still is to this day. He is a 3-time above 15 goal scorer, which also isn't great, and he's had above -10 4 times in his career. So statistically and just in general, Johansson has never been really a great player. So this trade surprised me quite a bit, especially because there were no additional pieces with Johansson. And you might be saying, oh, but there was probably a contract reason or something. But earlier, if you remember, I mentioned that Eric Staal is actually $1.25 million cheaper. So this trade is really leaving everyone scratching their heads. The only really good reason to make this trade specifically is because of the age. And even then, Marcus Johansson has probably declined more in his shorter career than Eric Staal has in his whole career. So we've talked a lot about Marcus Johansson and the Minnesota Wild side of things. Now let's talk about the pros and cons of Eric Staal and just the things on the Buffalo side of things. So the first pro is that they got a much better player. Getting a better player, in my opinion, is always better, obviously, unless it's like a higher potential player over a better player, but usually it is. And especially when the player is cheap, and especially when the player is sort of what you're looking for. That is literally 3 pros in one. Staal is very cheap for his skill, and that is already a big pro. But Buffalo is also in a cap crunch, and they need to add more talent around Eichel. So this really makes sense for them. Another pro is that they didn't give up too much. They literally gave up a piece that was probably going to get moved either way. And they also got a star player out of Johansson. And Johansson isn't even a high value piece. So it's pretty surprising that they were able to get what they got out of Johansson. Another pro is that Staal is a veteran and he'll use his leadership and experience to help out Buffalo's young and up-and-coming players. Another pro is that he was also GM Kevin Adams' teammate back in 2006 when Carolina won the Cup, so they should have chemistry. That is literally 6 pros, and those are just some of the main ones. There's other pros. So it's pretty clear that they got a lot more than Minnesota got, or at least they got a lot more of stuff that they needed than Minnesota got. Anyways, let's move on to the cons. The first con for Staal, and probably the main reason why he was undervalued by Minnesota, is his age. Although he is old, I am really not that concerned about him declining and becoming awful next season. I'm very sure that he'll have at least one good season, but you never know with age, so it is a concern, but not a huge one in my eyes. And worst case scenario, you trade him at the deadline and still get something out of him. Another con is that he has 1 year left and maybe might retire. I think he probably won't retire after this year. I think he still has at least 1 contract left, but he hasn't really talked too much about retirement, so don't really know. But just based off what I'm assuming and what I think will happen, I'm pretty confident he won't retire after this season, and I think he'll go for at least 1 more contract. honestly, I can't really see any other important cons on the Buffalo side of things. I think Buffalo undoubtedly won this trade in my eyes, and it actually confused me a little. I think Minnesota could have gotten much more with Staal, and I think Staal would have been an ideal player for a contender team looking to go all in or just get a good push and maybe get some playoff experience. And he costs almost as much as Jay Beagle, who is someone on my favorite team who is 2 years older and way worse than Staal. It's actually kind of confusing. Honestly, I think they could have gotten a lot more, and I think that Buffalo made a great move with this, and it really is a good first impression for Kevyn Adams. I'm actually proud of them. This was one of their best deals that they've made probably in this decade. Yeah, I'm kind of hyping it up, but I felt like this was a good deal, and I genuinely am happy to see Buffalo make a smart deal that probably will pay off a lot. Anyways, that concludes today's video. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing. It really helps me out a lot, and especially on the road to 400 subs. We are literally 6 subs away, and every sub helps me out so much. Anyways, until next time, bye.